In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you 7 silent leg signs that can quietly predict how long you stay independent. Not your heart, not your blood pressure, your legs. If you're over 50, this matters more than you think, because most people don't lose their independence overnight. It starts small. A little numbness in the feet, a little swelling at the ankles, trouble standing up without using your hands. You tell yourself it's just aging. But what if it's not? What if your legs have been sending warning signals for years? Here in America, one of the biggest fears people over 60 share isn't death. It's losing the ability to walk freely, to get up off the floor, to live in your own home without help. And the truth is, your legs often know before you do. So as you watch this, I want you to quietly ask yourself, can I still rise from the floor without struggle? If that question makes you pause, stay with me. This could be the most important checkup you do this year. Let's begin. 1. There is something called peripheral neuropathy. This usually happens in people with diabetes. With diabetes, you have high levels of sugar in the bloodstream, and that damages the blood vessels and also the nervous system. That is because high blood sugar is toxic. The reason people with diabetes often feel numbness, pain, tingling or burning in the bottoms of their feet first, and sometimes in their fingertips, is related to how the nerves are supplied. You have very long nerves, and the farther a nerve is from the heart, the more likely it is to show problems first, because it typically receives slightly less oxygen, blood flow and nutrition than tissues closer to the heart. When you have peripheral neuropathy in the bottoms of your feet, you need to understand what is really happening. This is a blood sugar problem. You most likely have either pre-diabetes or diabetes. Normally, the body keeps blood sugar under very tight control. In fact, the amount of sugar circulating in all of your blood at any given time is roughly about 1 teaspoon. But if you include all the sugar your body processes from starches, you are talking about the equivalent of 50 to 100 teaspoons of sugar moving through your system, including hidden sugars as well. So if normal blood sugar is about 1 teaspoon, you can imagine what excess sugar can do to the arteries and what your body has to do to remove it. The body removes sugar aggressively using a kind of vacuum cleaner called insulin. Normal blood sugar is about 1 teaspoon, and diabetes can be thought of as about 2 teaspoons. What does that mean? It means the body does not want sugar staying in the blood, so it works to clear it out. But when you have the equivalent of 2 teaspoons circulating, you have an insulin problem. Either you have so much insulin resistance that insulin cannot work effectively anymore, or your pancreas is so worn out that it cannot produce as much insulin. In that case, you no longer have enough of that vacuum cleaner to pull sugar out of the bloodstream. Then blood sugar rises, and that is where you get the blood vessel problems I will be talking about, and they often show up in the bottom of the foot. Too much sugar is extremely damaging to circulation and to nerves. 2. Ankle and foot edema. You know, when I am traveling or visiting somewhere, I often see someone wearing sandals or even shoes, and the top of their foot is completely swollen. I can also see the lower part of their legs looking very puffy. I want to walk up to them, but I do not. Those people have serious edema. If you press into the ankle, it leaves an indentation that stays there. That is called pitting edema, and that is not a minor issue. That is a big problem. Or they take their socks off and there is a deep indentation left around the lower legs. What is really strange is that I had a version of this earlier in my life. I had pitting edema, which is wild to think about now. This is a sign that circulation has gotten so poor that it may be affecting the kidneys, the liver, or the heart. And you are getting less oxygen to the bottoms of your feet because the blood is not circulating properly. It is pooling down there. And think about how much strain that puts on the heart. Here is how it works. You have the arterial system, the arteries that push blood out to your extremities, to your fingers and toes. That blood travels to the end of a long network, then it moves through capillaries, tiny blood vessels, and then it crosses over into the venous system. The venous system returns blood back up to the heart. Then it goes to the lungs to be reoxygenated, and the cycle repeats. If at the end of that chain, down at the bottom of the foot, you have pooling of blood or fluid, that means there is a backup in the system. In that situation, the heart has to work much harder to push blood through that resistance. So number 2 is a very strong indicator that you may have a deeper problem, and you should not ignore it. You should do something about it. And from my viewpoint, you should consider a more natural approach, because many times what happens is they simply put you on a blood thinner and then monitor you. 3. Restless leg syndrome. What is that? It is the condition where your legs feel extremely restless, usually at night. I had this condition, and it was driving me crazy. I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and feel like I had to pound my legs because they felt so full of energy. I could not relax. I could not sleep. I did not realize at the time that my diet was contributing to it. I was eating way too much sugar and starch. I was having a lot of ice cream, and I was drinking alcohol back then. What happens is that this kind of diet can severely deplete certain vitamins, and it can also lead to a buildup of too much lactic acid. That can create a cramping type sensation and poor circulation. I did not realize there were a couple of ways to address it. Number 1 is to change your diet. Another is to take vitamin B1. B1 can be a great option. Magnesium can help too. Together, those two can counter the effects of a high sugar diet. But you also have to understand what caused the deficiency in the first place, especially magnesium deficiency, which is often tied to a high refined carbohydrate diet. So you address it from both sides. Change the diet and support the body with nutrients. The problem with restless leg syndrome is that it keeps you awake and prevents you from sleeping, and not getting enough sleep can shorten your lifespan. There is a strong link between poor sleep and increased risk of heart attacks and strokes. It can also raise your risk for diabetes because it increases cortisol. Other than that, you are totally fine with number 3. 4. Deep vein thrombosis. Thrombosis is basically a blood clot. One of the dangers is that a clot can break loose from the veins in your legs and travel up to your lungs. That is very serious. It can be fatal. More than 90 to 95% of heart attacks and strokes involve a clot, even more than plaque buildup in the arteries. So this is something you need to pay attention to, and it is extremely important because certain things in your body can raise your risk of forming clots, and I will cover those in the second part of this. But 2 major factors are stress, and then once again, a high carbohydrate diet. 5. Peripheral artery disease. This is artery disease that is not necessarily in the heart. It can affect other parts of the body too, so you can have atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, that goes beyond just the coronary arteries of the heart. I'm going to go into more detail about what to do about that, but first, understand this. The inside of your artery is lined with a single layer of cells called the endothelium, also known as the endothelial layer. This is a critically important tissue to keep healthy. If it is not healthy, it can lead to narrowing of the artery. It can contribute to hardening of the arteries. The arteries become more rigid. Then inflammation starts, and the body comes in with what is basically a bandage to try to repair the damage, and that bandage is plaque buildup. But an even bigger issue is clot formation. A clot can break off, travel to the brain, and cause a stroke. A lot more people die from clots. In this particular situation, however, we are talking more about plaque buildup. 6. Chronic venous insufficiency. When we are talking about the veins, we are talking about blood pooling in the venous system. A lot of the time, this is associated with being sedentary and not getting enough movement or exercise. The key thing about veins is that they rely heavily on muscle movement to help push blood back up to the heart. Many people simply are not moving enough, so the venous system becomes inefficient. The blood becomes stagnant, and that increases pressure and workload on the heart because the heart has to work harder to keep circulation moving. One interesting thing about this condition is what you can often see in the lower legs and around the ankles. You may notice skin discoloration, including small spots. You might see a brownish colouring. You may notice hair loss, thinner skin, and you will often see pitting edema. What is happening is that the lower part of the legs is not getting enough oxygen, and over time, this can shorten your lifespan. 7. We get sarcopenia. This is age-related muscle loss. It is one of the strongest predictors of mortality as you get older, because simply losing muscle raises risk. Muscle is a very important metabolic organ. It contains many mitochondria, the energy factories inside cells. Muscle helps you burn sugar, so when you lose muscle, you lose a major buffer that supports a longer life. Sarcopenia is a combination of aging, poor diet, missing key nutrients, especially magnesium, vitamin D and zinc, and also living a more sedentary lifestyle. To retain and maintain muscle, you typically need a combination of adequate protein, especially from animal sources, and exercise. As you get older, you should learn from other people's mistakes and do whatever you can to keep a consistent exercise routine. Aim to become more fit every single year, because you are up against aging. What you want is to build an extra reserve of fitness that can help offset the aging process that everyone goes through, and to maintain as much muscle as possible as you age. Now let us talk about type 2 diabetes. This relates to the peripheral neuropathy I mentioned, but it also connects to many of the other problems I discussed. Because the worse your blood sugar control is, the more problems you will have with the inner lining of your arteries. And it is strange to me that when someone is diagnosed with diabetes, they are not immediately told to follow a low-carbohydrate diet. Instead, they are told, we are going to manage your blood sugar, and we will even give you glucose tablets. If your blood sugar goes too low, you take these sugar tablets to bring it back up. So it becomes all about managing the downstream effects of the real root cause, which is basically eating too many carbohydrates. I do not want to get sidetracked, but I will say this. I do not know whether it is intentional, but it probably is. Medicine is so siloed. It is set up in a way that keeps the cause and effect relationship from being clearly seen. Doctors are put into separate specialties, but we are not connecting the dots between those silos. The whole system is not designed to focus on root causes. It does not focus on lifestyle factors. It manages downstream effects. Even in research, everything becomes there is an association. They cannot be too direct and say this causes that. Or they will say, let us do screening for early detection so we can put you on medications earlier. Unfortunately, there is not much true prevention happening. With type 2 diabetes, you should seriously attempt a low-carbohydrate diet and intermittent fasting, such as 2 meals a day or even 1 meal a day. Why? Because strong research shows you can reverse type 2 diabetes in 10 weeks with a low-carbohydrate approach. And it is not just blood sugar. You can also improve fatty liver, improve arterial health, improve leg circulation, and definitely improve peripheral neuropathy. Here are 2 remedies I recommend for peripheral neuropathy, which can help support nerve healing in the bottoms of the feet or in the fingertips. Benfotiamine is one. If you buy benfotiamine, take 4 capsules spaced throughout the day. It works extremely well. The other is alpha-lipoic acid. Both can be very helpful for improving peripheral neuropathy. Of course, you also want to address the root cause by fixing the diet. Now let us talk about the lymphatic system and the veins. Most sedentary people develop pooling of fluid in the lower legs because the heart does not fully overcome the venous return problem on its own. Movement and muscle action help drive blood and fluid back upward. There is a very interesting muscle involved in this. It is called the soleus, part of the calf. This muscle is unique. A man developed something called the Soleus push-up. Almost anyone can do it, especially people who sit a lot, like at a computer. You can do a Soleus push-up and create dramatic improvements in blood sugar and circulation because it pushes blood back up towards the heart and reduces strain on the heart. It is like a second heart in your calf. What is unique about the Soleus is that it does not fatigue easily. It has incredible endurance and is very efficient. I strongly recommend doing this while you are sitting. I'm going to show you a video now about the person who developed it so you can understand how to do it. I want you to picture your ankle joint. It can help to have a friend place one hand on the top of your foot and another on the front of your ankle, right where the ankle straightens. Picture the foot and ankle coming into alignment. What you are doing is simply straightening the joint. That is the motion you should focus on. This helps you avoid common mistakes that I will mention later, including mistakes I see in some videos where people are taught the movement incorrectly. Next, as you do that, imagine you are lightly pressing through the ball of your foot, where the toes connect to the foot at the metatarsophalangeal joint. Press lightly as you straighten the ankle. Do not press too hard, or you will start using the muscles in the upper leg. You want the thigh muscles completely relaxed. Then you want a smooth, dynamic motion. The pace can vary, but the key is fluid movement, like a steady up and down motion. Keep it smooth. Do not jerk it. You do not need to jerk, pause, or force it. There are reasons for that, and I will explain them later. One last thing about muscles. At rest, your muscles only use about 15% of your energy. Your brain uses about 20% of your energy at rest. So if you are sedentary, eating plenty of calories, and thinking your muscles will burn it off, they only use a small share of that energy when you are inactive. That is why consistent exercise matters so much. Now let us talk about sarcopenia for a moment. As you get older, the muscles can get smaller and smaller, and you get weaker and weaker. There is an interesting assessment called the sitting rising test. I'm going to show you a video of it in a moment, but it is a test that has been linked to longevity. After you watch the video, I want to see if you can do this. I recommend trying it on a surface that is not too slippery. You are basically going to lower yourself into a seated position on the floor, and then you are going to try to stand back up without using your arms. Let me show you how to do it right now. Is there value in being more graceful when getting up off the floor? Absolutely. It is an indicator of overall strength and especially core and hip strength. Here is what they recommend, and I will show you a starting point for getting up off the floor without using your hands or coming up onto your knees. Cross your legs. Can you sit down first? How far can you lower yourself? Can you get down to here? Then what they want you to do is cross one leg under and maybe use a small push or a slight forward swing. But can you stand up without using your hands? Let us tackle that part first. If that feels like a major struggle, you probably need to practice squats. How low can you squat? Can you get into what they call an Asian squat, where you sit very deep like this? You can keep your hands and knees connected. I like to push my hips back. It looks strange, it looks a little wild, but it is great for hip mobility. So practice squats. You can also use props, a box, a yoga block, or even a book. Practice sitting on something slightly elevated. Keep your chest up, then stand back up. These are ways to practice the basic squat position. You also saw me do what they call a pistol squat or single leg squat. You can use a chair and practice how far down can I go and then come back up. If you want to work toward the single leg version, you can do it that way. Next are hip switches. These help with finesse, agility, and hip mobility. Option 1 is to lean back for support. You go back and forth like this. It looks like a windshield wiper motion. Think of it this way. Keep your knees bent, then let both knees fall to one side, and then let both knees fall to the other side. You can use your hands behind you for support. Over time, you can progress to doing it without your hands. Finally, you can try to stay more upright. Do not lean back as much. Sit tall and do the same side-to-side motion. And for anyone thinking, I do not necessarily need to stand up without my hands, but I would like to get to one knee and then stand, you can keep the momentum going. Move into position and then come up from the knee. If you have not tried this test yet, pause the video and try it right now. Then comment below whether you can do it or not. Now let us talk about edema for a moment. I mentioned that it can relate to kidney issues, liver issues, or heart issues. What you are seeing is blood and fluid pooling in the lower part of the body, and you need to push it back up with the Soleus push-up, along with walking and regular exercise. But do not forget potassium. Potassium is excellent at balancing sodium and helping move fluid out of the body. It acts like a natural diuretic. We need about 4,700 milligrams of potassium every single day, and very few people get that much. It is a myth that potassium is automatically bad for the kidneys. What is true is that if you have late-stage kidney disease, you need to work with your doctor before increasing minerals like potassium. But if you do not have advanced kidney disease, getting more potassium, even normal healthy amounts, such as through an electrolyte powder, can help reduce a significant amount of excess fluid. Also, go low carbohydrate and consider intermittent fasting, because carbohydrates can be a major contributor to fluid retention too. Many people who switch to a low carbohydrate ketogenic diet notice that within 2 days they drop 7 to 11 pounds. A lot of that is water weight, meaning extra fluid that comes off quickly. Now, this is not nitric acid, this is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a compound that supports the inner lining of the arteries, the endothelial layer. It helps arteries relax and widen. So how do you increase nitric oxide? Exercise. Sunlight, including infrared and ultraviolet exposure, can increase nitric oxide. Nasal breathing, especially breathing through your nose while sleeping, can increase nitric oxide. Getting more vitamin D can also support nitric oxide. From a food standpoint, one of the most powerful nitrate-rich foods that can convert into nitric oxide is arugula. That is the main salad green I eat. Beets also help. I use an organic beet juice powder. I mix it with cacao, which is raw cocoa powder, and I blend it into some raw milk about 2 hours after my morning coffee, because cacao contains polyphenols that strongly support nitric oxide. Combining cacao with beets creates a very interesting flavor. I like it. In water, it tastes worse, but in raw milk, it works really well. I also blend it so it mixes smoothly. That is a great way to increase nitric oxide. Magnesium also supports nitric oxide. What decreases nitric oxide? Smoking, pollution, stress, being too sedentary, alcohol, refined carbohydrates and sugar, proton pump inhibitors, which are acid-reducing medications, and also mouthwash. Next, I have already said this several times, regular, consistent exercise. If you tend to procrastinate or you think you do not have time, micro-exercises can make a big difference. Very short bursts throughout the day, even 1 to 2 minutes at a time, can add up and can be comparable to a longer workout. So do what you can. Take the stairs instead of the elevator, and if you can, move faster up the stairs. If you are at a computer a lot, take frequent breaks and do a short burst of movement. It is cumulative. I want you to start increasing how much motion you put into your day. And pair that with good sleep, because sleep is when you recover from exercise. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. And don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Senior Meal Coach for more science-backed tips to stay strong and independent after 60. Remember this, aging doesn't have to mean getting weaker. With the right daily habits, you can wake up every morning feeling stronger. The choice is yours. Have a blessed day, and as always, breathe easy, my friend.